we just had the Dyke March in New York, and when I was younger, I would always wear this, like, same, like, mesh swimsuit with, like, a pair of shorts and just would be like, "Yeah, like, I'm out here," and just that was really fun for me, like, it didn't feel and but then there was one year when, like, there was a photo that ended up, like, everywhere, and I was okay with it, but I was like, "This might be the last year I'm gonna wear this, like, swimsuit because I do feel like there's a kind of, like, trend towards surveillance, and virality that I just didn't need to be a part of. So I think I do curb myself a lot. Like, I mean, Reese is like a topless beach, and I'll just never be topless on it because 'cause I'm like, I don't want there to be a topless photo of me on the internet. Not because I think it's bad or because I have any problems with how I look shirtless. I don't want that in the public record till the end of time. Until maybe I do, and then I'll release it myself, and I think that I wanna have the decision.
Welcome to Stars and Stars with Issa. This is the show where we look to the stars above with the stars below. I'm Issa Nakazawa, your host and resident astrologer. And today's episode is especially exciting for me because I get to chat with someone who's almost my identical birth chart twin, J Wortham. Jay is a writer, oral historian, Reiki practitioner, and sound healer. They're also the co editor of the art anthology Black Futures and are currently working on a book about the body and disassociation called Work of Body. You might have read their work in the New York Times Magazine, Wired, or Vogue, or maybe you've heard their voice on the podcast Still Processing from the New York Times. Jay recently completed a fellowship at Duke University's Center for Documentary Studies, where they worked on a visual oral history of Reese Beach, the iconic shoreline in Queens, New York. In today's conversation, we talk all about the art of slowing down and honoring boundaries. So let's get into the episode. Before we dive into the amazing details of your chart, I do feel like from just following your work and even just your IG for so long, I feel like you have your own relationship to astrology. And I would love to know like
Mm.
how you would describe your relationship to the stars and if you have your own astrology practice.
Yes, when I was little, everybody in my family got these little astrology books for some holiday. It might have been Christmas or Valentine's Day. I don't know. They just appeared in our lives. And it was sort of like just all this information about what the characteristics of your sun sign, like other people who shared your attributes, things to know about yourself. And at least in that primary family unit that I was growing up in, me, my mother, and my sister were all water signs. So my sister's a Cancer, my mom's a Pisces, and so we could all read each other's. I always was raised with this sense of astrology being another potential piece of data to help you understand yourself and learn about yourself and kind of move through the world. And when we were younger too, sometimes for special occasions, like I think for our 16th birthdays, we got astrology and tarot readings. And I've actually never asked my mom where that came from for her, but I have a lot of aunts, and I think just sometimes that many women, I have a lot of women in my on the matriarchal side of my family, and also on my dad's side. There's just a lot of women
Yeah,
actually all
same.
around, and I think that makes things witchy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, so did your
So
mom give you these books?
yeah, and
Okay.
I've never asked her about it. I should ask her, but I do remember it wasn't like seen as a, woo woo or asinine thing, but I also know it wasn't that popular growing up. Like
No.
people didn't know about astrology, people didn't know about zodiac signs. Like it wasn't a thing that anyone else I knew was talking about or thinking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's always been a big part of my life. And in terms of my own practice, I would say I've actually taken a pretty big step back from astrology in recent years. I feel like this celestial signs have not been good for this country and not been just good for the times that we're moving through. And so it's hard enough to kind of digest and absorb global news and updates on a regular basis. And then it's also hard to have it be affirmed in my mind, affirmed by what's kind of going on up above. I'm like, I don't need to know that things are moving and,
Yeah,
Saturn is
yeah.
fucking shit up or like, I feel it. Like, I know I don't need to know anymore. And so
No, I love
only
that.
recently, some Scorpios have come back into my life or like people I've known and now we have a kind of a different relationship is just gonna happen in adulthood. And they're bringing it back into my life. So they're reminding me, here's what's going on with their transits. Here's what's going on. And it's
Mm.
interesting to have it through that perspective. So I would say that's my practice is kind of whatever people share with me. And then, I'm good friends with Channy. So oftentimes I'll be talking to her about something in my life and she'll be like, that's because this is moving through this in your house. And I'm
Astrologers.
like, layer
You're
it
all
all over
boom
me.
there.
I'm like, I can't deny it.
Yes.
So, and her TikToks, I watch her TikToks and then I'm like, okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Well, I love that answer. And I think you just modeled how astrology can go in and out of our lives and be this kind of companion. I think it's really wise right now, especially to give yourself permission to put things down. I think novices in astrology forget how dense the practice of astrology is. Like, it's actually really dense. And I think it can be overwhelming because it's a lot of information. So, you are a Scorpio sun, the best sun sign, a Gemini moon,
Thank you.
and a Taurus rising, which is also, no, I'm just kidding. Let me not. But this is the first time I'm reading for a Taurus rising Scorpio sun, including in my client work. So it's really exciting because I also think we can show listeners how having very similar charts can still look like very different expressions.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because when we
Mhm.
get to your Venus, you and I have very different dynamics in our Venus. And so it shapes the way that we can share a certain understanding and also these like really cool departures. So we always start with your rising sign because it's a deeply personal sign. It orients us to the way that you show up in the world, your style and
Mhm.
flavor. As Channy says, it's kind of
Mhm.
like your big yes. And I think on like a simple tip, I also think of it as like if we're thinking of the car metaphor of astrology or your birth chart, it is the literal car. It's like it shows us not just the mask, but like our instincts and how we engage the world. And of course, our rising sign also sets the houses in our chart. So it's really essential and
Mm.
primary. And there's
Mhm.
so much to say about
Mhm.
Taurus. So I want us to just like start somewhere and then we'll get deeper. But
Okay.
when I think of you specifically and Taurus rising, I was thinking a lot about the fixed earth like
Mhm.
going slow. I think you and I even offline have been talking about both of our relationship to slowness and slowing down. Jay runs a really amazing Substack that you should all check out and follow. And I've been really enjoying your writing. And I feel like in your writing lately, you've been kind of weaving in this like Taurian relationship to what it's like, especially in a place like New York. What does it mean to slow down? What does it mean to be in multiple places in your life and lived experience, whether it's like a sobriety journey or a healing journey from medical complexity that like requires us to do what Tauruses know how to do, but you and I both have faster parts of our charts that might rebel or resist against slowing down, right? So our
Mhm.
charts are
Mhm.
complicated. Taurus risings are here to be present. Like we're here to sit with what's available and not rush through it. But I want to start there and just ask you what's been emerging in the slowness for you. Is it something at this age in your life that comes more easily? Or is it something that, yeah, I'm just curious your relationship to this Taurian presence and slowness.
I love the way you're drawing in these themes that I've been exploring in my work. My little newsletter, thank you for
I
reading
love
it. It's
it.
such a little pet project. I love it too. But I like the way you're pulling out some of the things that are coming out in my own personal explorations as being tied to my chart. That's really cool to think about. I am interested in sustainability. I'm interested in longevity. I'm interested in quality of life. I think for a long time I was really interested in quantity of life and I have had many, many big quantities of life. And I think now I'm really interested in kind of going deeper into my friendships and my relationships and my own life and my own body and my city and my community. And, I really don't wanna live with my head in the clouds, and so part of that for me and New York is such a place that encourages dissociation, encourages pace, and encourages velocity, and people are really rewarded for it, and I certainly have been. But now I'm in a place where I'm like I was just talking about this with someone where I love not scheduling out my weekends too much, and so when someone's like, "Do you wanna go to this movie?" I can be like, "Yes," and for years the spontaneity was never available to me because I would be like, "I'm booked, everything is packed, I'm trying to do so much." And there's a way in which I think this comes with age where I'm not feeling afraid of spaciousness, I'm not feeling afraid of my own mind, I'm not afraid of sitting with myself and my thoughts, and so sometimes not having plans used to really scare me, and now it's sort of a delight. And the thing about New York that's just so true is, like, if you wanna do something, there's something to do. Like,
Yes.
it's, you're not gonna be alone if you don't wanna be alone. So, I think I've just relaxed into that, and it has allowed for a lot more presence.
I really relate to that. Taurus rising, like one of our gifts is what you were saying. It's sustainability. It's like the grazing bull, it's steadying. A lot of times people will reflect when they meet a Taurus rising that we have this kind of like quiet power to us, like this magnetism that feels like it's present with what is, like as I was saying, but then our Scorpio energy is always going to pull us into transformation and we can always be
Mhm.
drawn to complexity. And so, in a sense, that can be a little bit of a dance. Like, where in our lives do we
Mhm.
feel a draw towards what's predictable and sustainable and stable? And then, where's that kind of Scorpio siren call towards transformation? And to be real, like, transformation means change and it's not something Taurus
Mhm.
loves. Where in your life do you find that need for stability and balance? And where is that Scorpio still very much alive in you? That's like, I can't do too much of that. Like, I also
Yeah.
am here to transform.
Yeah, I haven't thought too much about how those 2 things are a little bit at odds with each other, maybe just tugging on different, instinctual ends of, like, an emotional spectrum. I mean, I love stability, I love predictability, and I think a lot of that too comes from within for me, and maybe that's part of it. It's like I really anchor myself within myself. I think for me, the Scorpio need for transformation is very slow and steady. Like, I think some people might wake up and be like, "I need to change my life," and then make a decision and do it, and I think I sort of come into awareness that there's a desire or a need to shift something, and then I start kind of working my way towards it. I'm in that moment right now, actually, and I have in the last couple of weeks, I've gotten these new glasses,
So
I'm
cute.
letting my hair grow out a little bit, thank you, which, um, feels fun. Like, I kind of was able to make those decisions really quickly because they're just so superficial. If they don't work, I can swap them out. And that's really fun for me, but, like, the bigger life changes I'm working towards, I'm, like, really plotting and, like, spending time journaling and, like, spending time speaking with friends. I like the slower buildup to a
Yes.
big change, and also sometimes in my life, I mean, a few years sometimes in my life, I'm really open to something that feels kinda spontaneous. If it feels aligned and not like a chaotic or really big hectic change. Like, a few years ago, I was planning to take a sabbatical to work on my 2nd book, and I didn't know where I was gonna go, I just knew I was gonna leave New York, and at the 11th hour and I was sort of like had some options, I was like, "It'll come together, I had, like, some loose plans, I was like, "I'm gonna do a residency upstate, and then I'm gonna go here for a month, and then we'll see," and out of the blue, some friends on the other side of they were like, "We need to do a house swap," and so
Oh,
I was like, "You can
say
my
less. Yeah.
apartment's open." Like, "Okay." I have a subletter, but she's not coming until, like, in 2 months. So it worked out. So I ended up going to their house and then finding housing there and then where they live and staying, and, then I spent some time in LA after that, and that was really incredible, and so sometimes when I'm ready for a transformation, it's like I can open the door for change and then see what comes in, and maybe that soothes the Taurian sensibility. It doesn't feel like I got on a plane in 24 hours. It feels like I'm,
Yes.
like, seeding and, like, tilling the field to be available for whatever wants to grow.
Yeah, I loved that, and Gemini's just really good at being like, able to just hold the humor in a moment. Earth signs, I feel like, are very dry, and then I feel like Scorpios everyone who's close to me is like, "You say the heaviest, most intense shit, and then you laugh at the end." And I'm like, "Yes, that's Scorpio." Like, I think
That is
Scorpio
Scorpio.
is not afraid of what's intense. Like, I would say Scorpio is nocturnal, we are more intense, we need you to tell it like it is, whereas 7th house Libran energy is more about balance and harmony. So sometimes, like, having Scorpio in the 7th makes me giggle because I do feel like we transform through our relationships, and that is not just, like, romantic,
Um,
kind of conventional relationships. In fact, it's usually not because it's Scorpio. So it's like
mhm.
when you make jokes about sexting with your friends or having erotic friendship or having relationships or magnetism towards connections that you consciously don't even know what you're trying to get out of them. Does that land at all? Like, how do you feel like the Scorpio in the 7th shows up for you and you're relating?
I mean, everything you just shared about I took a note, that we transform through relationships really, really resonates with me because I think that I mean, I know I'm someone who has really benefited from the deep relationships that I've had with people. I've, like, reparented myself
Mhm.
through relationships with older women, and older lesbians, and I've definitely transformed parts of, like, inner child landscape and inner family landscape with close friends who have also grown up in ways that were less than functional, and, it's there is so much of that deep trust and intimacy that comes with me that's not necessarily, relevant in my family of origin, but it is really relevant in chosen family, and,
Wow.
a lot of, like, gentle reflections. I mean, I do think the the sweet spot of being a Scorpio is when you get to a place where you can laugh at your own heaviness, and I think one thing people always say when they get to know me is that I'm surprisingly really goofy, is that I seem really serious online, and then I'm actually just, like, a total clown, and it's true, and, like, I love to do impressions, and it's just stuff that's, like, never gonna be online because why would it be? I would not it's
Same.
a
That makes me
Scorpio
feel
thing where I'm
seen.
just like, the private like, duh, it's not for everybody, but,
Yes.
it is the thing that consistently comes up when new people meet me, they're like, you're such a,
Goof.
jester," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's fun." It's like, gotta be able to laugh at the hard stuff, you know?
You have like a really charged Gemini moon where it's making both a trine to Pluto and Saturn. And I think it's great for people to look at the condition of their moon and if it's in conversation with other planetary energies because it textures it quite a bit. So you have the contact with Pluto, which is one of Scorpio's co rulers, which adds that scorpionic depths to it. And it also trines Saturn when you also have your Mars in Capricorn. And so you do have a lot of like Saturnian energy in your Martian chart as well. So I think that's something that's cool that adds even more nuance and specificity to your energy. And so I think that like Saturn, Pluto, Moon to me is like reparenting, letting yourself have boundaries. Like I think Saturn, wherever I see Saturn, I'm like, this person is going to learn how to hold boundaries with sharing their emotions. And hopefully those boundaries won't keep the good stuff out too. Because I think sometimes when I see Moon and Saturn, it's also like, how do you have soft boundaries where the boundaries make you feel safe, but as you said, boundary work is so hard because then it can also be so boundaried with the Scorpio and the Saturn aspects that now you're just like, "Why am I low key lonely?"
That's one for the books. I mean, I think that has been true for me earlier in life, and
Yes.
it's taken a lot of time to allow that vulnerability, right? Because that's really what that's about, and so having to sort of learn how to practice discernment and also how to yeah, I mean, you just have to have the bad experiences to have the good ones, and so I think I've had a lot of touching the hot stove over and over again to learn the lesson.
So before we move to more Venus specific questions, I do want to just land some of this in your work because you've done some pretty like amazing work on water. And it kind of touches on some of the things that are going on in your chart around this interplay of visibility and the sacred, unwitnessed parts of ourselves that don't require an audience or that
Mhm,
don't need
mhm.
one. And so I wonder if we can talk a little bit about some of the oral history work with Riz Beach and Waterfront Queer Stories and like what that project kind of taught you about what it means to be close to water, of the water. What does the
Mhm.
water reveal? And what do those beaches allow for in terms of both visibility and like a kind of useful hiding or like an intimate, not hiding, like an intimacy that's our own?
That Agnes Varda quote, she's a French filmmaker, and she's like, "If we open people up, they'd have landscapes inside of them."
Mm-mm.
I always think about that, and I'm like, if you open me up, it would just be the sea, like, it would just be
Yeah.
the ocean, because I really just feel so of the water, and it's, having so much water in my chart, I'm like, "Yeah, it makes sense." But I was lucky enough to grow up visiting the ocean pretty regularly. My parents are water people, beach people, like to fish, like to get some sun, like to drink hot beers, outside and grilling, and so I think that's also always been, like, really ingrained in me, the ways in which just, like, there's such a majesty and a lot of respect. It took me a little while to think about the beach and waterways as something that I could maybe have more of a intellectual practice with or have more of a praxis around is a fancy word people use. And so part of it was with this oral history fellowship where I was really curious about the histories, like how does queer community come together along particular waterways and coastlines, and like what are the ways of the water and our ways along water. And very quickly I learned that it's like impossible to figure it out. And something people always talk about, they're like, oh, queer people have been going to Reese since the 40s. And I'm like, before then, because how do the people in the 40s find out about it? In the 40s is just the first written record of people coming to this beach. Like, it's just there's so like, New York is full of coastlines, you know what I mean? There's, like, a million beaches here, so why this particular part of the beach? And, I like thinking about what happens near the water, and that beach in particular, there's no service, there's, like, not really a lot of facilities, there's not so there's just a lot of communal sharing that has to happen, a lot of deep knowledge. It's not accessible in any ways that it should be, although people do work, myself included, to try to make it more accessible for people in wheelchairs, things like that. But, there is just, like, an expansiveness, I think, that happens, and, like, a fullness of self, and I just I've always lived within maybe, like, a 30 to 40-minute drive of the beach here, and now where I live, I can also take a train really quickly to a different beach that is not my favorite beach, but I will just sometimes do it because I can get there in, like, 20 minutes and, like, swim for an hour and come back when it's really hot, and I've been writing. But I have a friend here, and we love to go out early in the mornings, and we'll go at, like, 7, get there at 8, swim for, like, 2 hours, come home, and then write, and it's just, like, the day is completely different once you've been in the ocean, and the last time we were there, we saw dolphins, and so
Oh my
it feels
gosh.
like such a way to, like, relocate the self inside the body, which is to relocate the self inside the Earth's body, which is nature. And so much of that dissociation is so structural and systemic in ways we don't think about. Like, we know in the ways in which, like, segregation has kept people from coastal towns, or we
In
can
the back.
think about it geographically in some ways, but also mm, you know people of the global majority often live alongside water, and so
Yeah.
many of our lineages and ancestral histories happen alongside water, for better or for worse, and so there's just something to me that feels so replenishing, and I'm always kind of stunned when other people are like, "I don't like the water, I have no relationship to it." I'm like, "Respect, respect," but then I'm like, "What's like, wow."
But you're also simultaneously acknowledging why it's so fraught. It's like
Yeah, it is.
a lot of this work is really that you're doing is really important. And I love the question that you pose where you say being visibly queer used to be a sign of pride. Now it feels like a target. Where can we be ourselves? And I think just landing it a little bit more specifically in your chart, you have a conjunction between Venus and your sun, which I think is really beautiful because your Venus is in Scorpio, which is in detriment. And so, again, we have this kind of Venusian energy that's in exile, but then yours is conjunct your sun. So, I think a lot of this work or this question of visibility and kind of like hiding is I'm trying to find a different word because I feel like it's unwitnessed to me because I think there's something really delicious for Venus and Scorpio about being unwitnessed. But that's why I'm asking this question for you because when I was thinking of like Venus conjunct Sun, I was kind of thinking of like public sex or public intimacy as kind of like one expression of it. Specifically, just to be clear, for Venus and Scorpio. But then I was like, curious for you where you feel excited by chasing an edge of like visibility or allowing people to see into intimacy. Sex is not really what I'm trying to talk about, but like any type of intimacy versus when does that Scorpio switch come on and like enjoy the unwitnessed aspect of it.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I mean, I have been thinking about making TikToks more. I don't know, maybe that's part of it,
Oh
which is,
yeah.
like, terrifying to me, but, like, why not? I just wanna understand the format a little bit better. Like, I think it's something I just don't really understand, I guess, and there's a part of me that's like, if I don't understand something, I kinda want to, but I'm very nervous about being perceived as cringe.
You got to go for it.
You gotta just go for it. Do you have a relationship to TikTok?
I just think Scorpios are so afraid of cringe. It's like it's almost like our biggest fear is being seen as cringe. And then you have a Gemini moon and I have an Aries moon and like Gemini and Aries are so team cringe. Like they're just so down to feel embarrassment.
I'm definitely someone in my, more agile, like, able-bodied days would love to be, like, an exhibitionist on the dance floor, or, like,
Yes.
at queer clubs, like, we just had the Dyke March in New York, and when I was younger, I would always wear this, like, same, like, mesh swimsuit with, like, a pair of shorts and just would be like, "Yeah, like, I'm out here," and just that was really fun for me, like, it didn't feel and but then there was one year when, like, there was a photo that ended up, like, everywhere, and I was okay with it, but I was like, "This might be the last year I'm gonna wear this, like, swimsuit because I do feel like there's a kind of, like, trend towards surveillance, and virality that I just didn't need to be a part of. So I think I do curb myself a lot. Like, I mean, Reese is like a topless beach, and I'll just never be topless on it because 'cause I'm like, I don't want there to be a topless photo of me on the internet. Not because I think it's bad or because I have any problems with how I look shirtless. I don't want that in the public record till the end of time. Until maybe I do, and then I'll release it myself, and I think that I wanna have the decision, and I don't feel like unfortunately, I just don't think that people have the kind of I don't know, there's something that social media does something to a lot of our brains, or we just kinda can't help invading people's privacy and just deciding, "Well, you're in a public place, it doesn't matter," and I don't think that's true.
I love this line that you're bringing, like delineating around, like, yeah, these kind of spontaneous expressions of our erotic or our desire, whether it's TikTok or like intimacy, but then how that dovetails with like surveillance, with documentation, with social media.
Mhm,
And there's like so many ways in which I feel like you embodied that line for Scorpio, where it's like, we're going to have control over the terms of not just engagement of like the production of the image and how it's distributed, and also just like the sacred boundary of intimacy, I think is just so deep for Scorpio Venus. But you and I both have this like interesting interplay where we have Venus and Scorpio and then Saturn ruled Mars. Like mine's Aqua and yours is Cap. And I feel like the Saturn is complicated for me because like sometimes I like relish in my weird attractions and then other times I like shut them down. Or I kind of create like a narrative of like, this isn't really okay. And so there's like a push and pull sometimes between like judging or casting judgment upon my, like and I'm using desire kinda loosely, like, the things I'm intrigued by or the people that I'm like, "I don't know, you're kinda weird, I'm into it," or like, "I don't know." And then the part of me that's too aware of what that could mean or what that could be perceived as. And I'm curious how that, like, interplay between Mars and Saturn sits for you of, like, do you have sometimes or maybe this is, again, like,
mhm,
a
mhm.
formative thing that you've I think, again, it's like there's things that we deal with younger that we are no longer in that same place. But, like, do you ever have, like, a meta kind of narrative or judgment or characterization of your attractions, or are you kind of like, "Nah, I'll, like, fully explore it?"
Oh, yeah. No, I'll fully explore it. I think maybe when I was younger, I would be a little self-conscious,
That's the
right?
word.
Like, if my friends would be like, "Oh," and then I'm like, "How dare you?" Like, it's like I trust my own curiosity, I suppose, and I trust my own instincts, and, I know that there can be a purpose that is short-lived or long-term, and, certainly there's things I'd like to explore with people, places, and things that don't have to make sense for other people, and part of that too is, like, being a writer. I'm also moving into some, like, documentary filmmaking work, and so it's just kind of this, like, seeing things through, like, what is this dynamic or, like, what is this, interaction, and I think being a Scorpio, though, like, it does backfire sometimes because I've had a lot of friendships cool or end because the other person is like, "Oh, no, aren't we dating?" Or like, "Aren't we?" And I'm like, "Are we?" There's been no
Not the high
e
pitched, are we?
expr the
Are
expression
we?
of that or physical contact. Like, I'm just kinda like, "What or haven't we been flirting this whole time?" And I'm like, "I've just been sending you pictures of seashells," but, I love those memes that are like, Scorpio has sent the same picture to, like, 10 people and everyone thinks it's a sex. I'm like, that has happened to me, so that's been kind of interesting, but again, it's that
Scorpio
thing of,
does
like, learning how to navigate discomfort and sit in it and be like, "Huh, I see. I think we were interpreting things quite differently, and I'm sorry for misleading you."
Yeah,
Although inside I'm not really,
I
'cause
can
I'm
tell.
like, "Ha was
It's
I?
like your face is saying
Was
something different.
I?" I'm like
Wait, on this tip though, I'm also interested because both of us are Venus ruled, which is more like receptive energy of like, okay, I am and thus you are, versus like Martian energy is very much like I'm a huntress and I'm going to hunt my like prey, which can be fun, like just being really pulled by someone and being so unaware of the dynamic. So like what is that dynamic for you of like like the Martian and the Venusian? Like do you feel like you can switch between both depending on who it is, or do you like to be kind of pursued, or do you like to have those moments of like fixating on someone and obsessing?
It's so both and. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so both and. And it's not always in a romantic capacity either.
Yes.
I'm definitely that person who's just like, I can't stop thinking about this painter. It's like
Yeah.
I haven't been able to stop thinking about, and I'm applying it to every single part of my life, and I think people sometimes in my orbit are like, okay, you've been talking about that for a little while. Like, what's going on? Or I'm like, I'm working my way through this entire filmmaker's canon just to kind of see what they think about the following things, and then I'm lucky because I'm like, oh, it's about, it's for cultural criticism. I mean, I wish it were deeper. I wish it were deeper. And that's a part that there's a part of me too that's sometimes afraid I'm not operating at the depth that I should be in some ways. Which isn't to
I
say that I
know.
won't eventually. It's just I want to do both and I want to have the deep and the light. I want to go subterranean and also be kind of, cumulate. Like, I want to be in the clouds too.
Ugh,
But yeah, I don't
it's
know.
too
I
real.
have to think about that. Yeah, it
I'm like,
is.
I'm
It
over
is.
relating a little bit. Yeah. But one of my like spiritual assignments for myself is like I over identify with the depth I still think I need to travel in intimacy because I think I travel it better intellectually. That like where my erotic is like intellectual lines of inquiry. And so like a lot of my erotic follows like idea riffing and like weaving ideas with guests.
Absolutely. Oh my god.
And this is where the house placements really give us information of like both of us, all of
Ah,
that
okay.
Scorpio is in the house of, you know, like Libra is relational, right? But it's also an air sign. So it's traveling along the lines of like it initiates connections and relationships through ideas, right? So it's still like Libra is still like to me the architect, the librarian, like the arc it's like we are Mars in terms of our Scorpio, but where that is all happening is in this house that really still is an air sign and it is cardinal. So it's not fixed. So I think it just adds so much important information of like where our erotic lives. And it's like, well, our erotic and our house placement is not a fixed sign. So it does enjoy like novelty and like it enjoys kind of like investigation through conversation, which is very Libran. And then both of us have our seventh house ruler is Mars because we have a Scorpio descendant and both of our Mars are ruled by Saturn. And Saturn is turned on by competence. So, like, oh, very turned on,
Oh,
yeah, by people
yes.
who are really good at what they do, right? And being really good at what you do, you can be a sheep herder, which is very Capricorn, if we're being
Mhm.
honest,
Mhm.
or you can
Mhm.
be a geologist. It's really not about the what,
Yeah.
it's about
Yeah,
the
it's not about the
competence.
what.
Yes.
Also, like, making a perfect beach salad or, like, a great shell collecting technique or it's not it's funny too because I really notice when people are, like, good with their hands, and it's like I'm like, "Oh, wow, you're like" or even just, like, watching people who are really good at putting makeup on, like, which I wear makeup sometimes, but I don't really know about all the steps and layers and things, and so I just get really fixated on that too and fascinated. I'm like, "This is art. This is, like, this is artisanal." Like, I'm just like, the levels, or, like, yeah, when you're especially in New York too, because there are people who know a lot about a lot of different things. And then just kinda getting into a conversation with someone who has a lot to say about, like, a certain cut of pants or something, and you're like, "Huh." Like, I also love that too.
Yeah.
Or if I'm in a relationship with someone who's really good at, like they have a very particular skill set, and, like, maybe it's organizing a travel or, like, maybe, a travel trip together, or maybe it's it's like that also can go a very long way for me. Someone who's very good at picking a restaurant or very good at, like, organizing a day together,
Oh,
bringing
I
me a
love
glass of
that.
water. I'm like swoon central. Like
Absolutely.
that's like a big thing for me too.
Before we wrap, I would love to know from you, like, what listeners, how they can stay connected. Do you want them to read your newsletter? Like, shout out any work or any ways to stay connected to you.
Oh my gosh, yes. Please find me on socials. My handles for everything is at Jane Deluxe. That's even my newsletter, janedeluxe.substack.com. And I usually try to post about stuff there.
Yes.
I also have a website, janedeluxe.com, that I will be updating very soon when things are not a retrograde. But yeah, I don't know. I'm
Be-
around. I'm online. I try to share stuff. pretty frequently, and I would love to hear from anybody who's moved by this episode.
Yes, definitely reach out, follow. And yeah, you also do typically write some really beautiful, sweet reflections around Scorpio season. So no pressure, but I always enjoy them and share them. So thank you so much, Jay, for being on Stars and Stars with Issa and for sharing all of your beautiful insights into your star map.
Sure, and thank you for your gifts and for sharing them. I feel like you're really in your life purpose, and I'm also longing to see what more purposes my life holds, and I love I don't know, it's like I just love that you have found this way to showcase your gifts and also talk to people that you're interested in, and it's such a beautiful expression of something that we all need and use and could know more about, so thank you.
That was J Wortham, who is a Scorpio sun. As always, to end the show, I want to leave you with some key takeaways we can all benefit from, inspired by our stars chart. So today was a real treat for me because both Jay and I are Taurus rising, Scorpio suns. So it was really great to talk to someone who understands both the gift and the challenge of having multiple prominent seventh house placements. With all of our Scorpio in the seventh house of relationships, both Jay and I are really here to transform through our deepest bonds. And for Jay, cultivating a chosen community with older women, especially older lesbians, has been truly transformative for their inner child and even helped them reparent themselves. So when you think of the seventh house, I don't want you to limit it to just a place of monogamous romantic partnership. It's also a house of committed and enduring bonds that include intimate friendship, chosen family, and a whole lot more. Now, our house placements really tell the story of the themes that the planets influence, and they also add really beautiful nuance and texture to our star map. If you've ever been wondering how Jay and I are both Scorpio stelliums that are this social and affable, just remember we're big seventh house vibes. So maybe that quieter, brooding, and introverted Scorpio friend you know has their planets in a more private and hidden place like the fourth or 12th house. Though intimidating and overwhelming at first, houses are really where astrology gets even more juicy and specific. That's it for our download from the cosmos this week. If you like today's episode, please leave a comment to keep the conversation going. I especially want to hear from you fellow seventh housers. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next week.